Okay. Welcome to another episode of ECommerce One. And today's guest is Joe Glover, the founder of the Marketing Meetup, a community of over 20,000 plus digital marketers and marketeers. How you doing, Joe?
Doing good. Thank you very much for having me here today.
Thank you for coming on. Thank you for agreeing to come on. Now, we've had quite a lot of meetings internally about who we're going to get on the podcast and guests that the team that they would like to get on the podcast. And your name has come up a few times. You have a bit of a fan base within our agency team. So it was like, right, let's get Joe on and find out all about the Marketing Meetup, about communities. And obviously, I know you've got a lot of stuff going on there in the community. Talking to our sort of team. So look really keen to find out about the Marketing Meetup and how that came about and sort of the motivation behind it.
Well, that's really super lovely that people have put my name forward. You know, it's a constant surprise to me, even at this stage, you know, that folks think of me in that way. And it's really kind that they would. In terms of like finding out about the Marketing Meetup, to the point of your question, then the Marketing Meetup, as you've already said in your introduction, is a community of marketers across the world, primarily in the UK, but we've also got people in America, Australia, Macedonia, Greece, Egypt, wherever it is. You know, we've sort of united marketers from across the world, even though that sounds quite grand. The line that we sort of speak about really is that we look to educate and connect marketers, but I think the most important thing about the Marketing Meetup is that it's done with kindness. And actually, for me, you know, I've got to be careful here not to sort of over-grandize, you know, sort of make it bigger than what it is. But for me, the Marketing Meetup is about marketing, but more it's about human connection. And I think we've all had that experience at some point in our life where we've walked into a networking room or had an interaction with someone at some point where they've denigrated you to a figure or a sale or whatever it may be, and you come out of that interaction feeling slimy or dirty, and it's just not nice. So 5 years ago I started a group as a hobby with the intention of just bringing together some lovely people to look after each other a little bit and speak about marketing. And I'm really lucky that over the course of time it's kind of grown into what it has. And I think perhaps the thing that I'm proudest of is, even though the numbers keep getting bigger and bigger, I think the values have always stayed so aligned, you know. So I feel very, very lucky, and it's been an amazing journey so far.
Wow, that's fantastic. So you're creating and giving so much content on a daily, weekly, month or year. Obviously 5 years in, you know, just before we hit record on the podcast, obviously having a regroup on some of the things you've been doing. You know, I think you're on episode 139 of the podcast, you know, webinars, experts on all different areas. What would you say some of the standout pieces of content around on the webinars and on the content that really stand out for you over the last year or so? And why?
It depends on the metric that you're applying at the time, you know. So stuff like the Mark Ritson session that we did was obviously amazing, you know, because it was a really large event. So like for that event, we had like 1,600 people sign up. There was like well over 900 people live on the session. Wow. Never mind, you know, just sort of watch it. I mean, stuff like the Rory Sutherland can be judged by the same sort of metric of sort of a large event with a big name as well. You know, these folks are people that are shaping the marketing industry. And they were sat there on our webinars, which was mad. You know, I mean, like I was pinching myself for those sessions. But then I think the important thing is that, and perhaps this is something that we all get swept away with a little bit, is that sometimes the big names, you know, in Mark and Rory's case, they absolutely delivered. But just because people have a littler name does not mean that they don't have anything less valuable to say or more valuable to say. So, for example, people like Mary Owusu, who leads a company called GuruBound, and John Asperian, who, you know, is a freelancer and he's a technical copywriter. You know, people like those. Mary spoke about SEO and John spoke about LinkedIn and how to do it right. And both were like probably the best ever talks that we've ever sort of had in terms of the reception to them. Because I would personally never pick one and say it was my favorite, but you know, in terms of the reception, then those were the ones. And the reason why was that they were super practical. You know, people came in with Mary. She was like, these are the steps that you need to do right now.
Yeah.
And I know that after that talk, I spent about 2 days implementing exactly what she
Yeah.
said.
Yeah.
And same for John. So I think there's lots of different ways you can judge your favorite or the best or whatever it may be. But with these talks, the real practical stuff was the stuff
Yeah.
that people wanted.
Yeah, that really resonates with me, to be fair. After going to industry event, an event after event, and listening to different talks and whatnot, and to be able to go away, I will really resonate with the speaker and see a real genuine passion, and clearly that they really understand their topic, and their passion for their topic is just quite infectious. But then
Absolutely.
having clear takeaways, you can go away and go, oh yeah, I didn't know we could do that, and breaking it down rather than leaving too much of a mystery of that topic, and you sort of go, well, I get we need to do SEO, but I still didn't really understand what we've got to do, or
Yes. Yeah.
which can be usually quite often the case, sort of thing.
Well,
Okay.
precisely. No, yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think each have their place as well. I think there's a time for inspiration, there's a time for practical,
Yeah.
and it depends what you need in that moment.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
another talk which Sherilyn Shackle, who's the head of the Marketing Academy, gave with us at the end of last year, and it wasn't a this is how you do SEO. It was a purely inspirational talk, but likewise the reception was ridiculous.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it depends what people need in
Yeah.
that moment.
Yeah.
But
Having that mix, I think even more so at the moment, where everyone's potentially working from home, or you can almost get sort of implementation overload, and definitely webinar overload, and having that, breaking it up with the more things on the mindset, more sort of dealing with different elements of lockdown life or whatever it may be, rather than just right SEO this, SEO this, SEO this, or whatever it may be. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think we have to come back down to the reason why we're doing these things, and so for me at least, then the Marketing Meetup is a vehicle to helping people live a better life in a way. And again, that sounds really grand, but I think broadly speaking, it's my job to help folks be better in a professional context, and if they're better in a professional context, then they're likely to be happier
Yeah.
at work, and if they're happier at work, then they're happier at home too. So I think there is an absolute influence that these things can have, whether it's inspirational, practical, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Just try to make people a little bit happier.
Yeah, which I think is the key, isn't it, for all of us? Really, we want to be that little bit. If we're happy in what we're doing, usually everything else sort of slots in. I think. It's definitely. So the community. When we say 20,000 people plus in a community, that's obviously that's a huge feat. It's fantastic. What would you say, are the benefits of that for the e-commerce stores that are listening in, and they're thinking, we're going to get into the community aspect as we go through the podcast episode, but the benefits that you think that, and you've seen, that would maybe correlate to e-commerce stores that are listening to the podcast, the benefits that they may get?
Yeah, I think there needs to be a caveat given up front, because I'm a big proponent of an argument that is community does not equal your customers. It's not the same thing. So I think people are very quick to rush to saying we've got this community.
Yeah.
And actually it's just people that are buying from you. And I'm a big defender of the word community for that reason, because I think it sort of takes the true essence of what a community is, which is a place where people can come together to conversate, to meet, to learn, and do it beyond just like a figurehead at the top who's telling them what to do. That they kind of become this sort of this nest, this sort of mesh of people and connection that is happening independent of this sort of higher level figure. So when we speak about the answer to this question, and we're saying about e-commerce and how can they benefit from community, the first thing that you got to say is you've got to make sure it's a real community. And you can only have that if people are speaking beyond just like with the e-commerce brand. If you've got a genuine community though, like one that really matters, then you are starting to create something where your brand is not only a brand which people interact with on a very surface level, something they might even wear or whatever it may be. You're getting something that's part of their being. You're getting something that they're proud to be part of. It's a movement. And this is the rubbish example that every marketer gives ever, but you know, they are a relevant one, is that Patagonia feels more like a cultural movement than it does just a brand, you
Yeah.
know, and you could say the same for Nike in the past.
Yeah.
The benefit of all that is that people start speaking. And so the greatest marketing channel in the entire world is word of mouth. And if people are start speaking about you and start identifying, it just goes down to psychology. You know, you start creating a group of people who resonate with your brand, resonate with it, to the point where your logo is their badge of honor, you know, their badge, and they will speak about it. And that's infectious. Peloton are doing it right now. People become their greatest advocates. And again, you know, folks start speaking, inevitably leads to sales further on down the line. So the benefit of community, probably the biggest one is, well, the first is engagement, and then the second is advocacy.
Okay. Great. I think it's newer territory more for a lot more e-commerce brands. I think, you know, it's obviously something that we've interviewed quite a few, or had quite a lot of guests, e-commerce actual owners on the podcast, and the ones that have got that community aspect right. I mean, I don't know exactly what right is. I can't really define it exactly, but you know, you can see when you look at their social media, you know, it's driven very much by, you know, the community rather than the owner or the head, if you like, or the, you know, the main person. It's what the ones that I see that are doing really well. Are the sort of, as you say, the advocates, the people in the community that are really like, what's the word? They're sort of flying the flag for the community, and it's like badge of honor, like you say, and they're almost, when you look on social media, they're answering for the community, or they're engaging with the community, and almost like the brand almost stand back, but they're not standing back. They're obviously guiding and moving things in the background. Yeah.
That's it. Yep, spot on. You know, I think that kind of advocacy that you see on social media, as you say, is a great example and a good signal that you're starting to build something that people care about.
So I mean, I think it is quite interesting going back to the sort of your community and my team. You know, we give them quite a bit of time each week and month to just, you know, spend time to learn and you know, we point them into certain trainings and courses and things like that, and we've got access to a lot of different people and training courses, but they very much you do, your community does get mentioned quite a lot, which is quite well, it's amazing, you know, really, really good. But what would you say would be one of the key things you've done, if you could sort of say one thing, maybe two, or maybe give you one or two, that you've done and you could pinpoint to the success of your community?
I'll give you two, because I guess then they work on either end. So I guess the first is, I don't want to say the word selfless, but it's the closest word to what I mean. You know, we look to give first. We look to benefit the human beings who are part of this community, improve their lives, and do so with a genuine sense that that's the purpose of the organization. You know, I think a lot of people will say the words that they're there to benefit their customers, but then if they had to make a decision between money and their customers, then they're going to choose the money one, you know. And I think I feel quite proud that the organization that I build, I think for the most part, you know, beyond purposes of practicality, will always choose the human element. So I think, you know, a sense of genuine concern, genuinely wanting to benefit human beings, that's been a point of pride, but also a point of success. I think the second point is very simply asking, and I think this is probably a point which can be replicated for anyone. I think as British people, we are terrible at asking people for help, or asking people, you know, it's like, oh, you know, if it's not too much trouble, you know, would you mind possibly kind of doing this thing which I wouldn't mind you doing? And you know, by the time you get to the ask, then people have fallen asleep. You know, so like the one channel that has grown the Marketing Meetup more than any other has been word of mouth. And there is a marked difference in the communications which I put out, in the response from folks when there's a line which says, would you mind sharing this, versus a communication where there isn't such a call to action.
You see a big increase. Yeah.
Absolutely. So,
Yeah.
I think, you know, I needed to get over myself to a certain extent, and sort of
Yeah.
meekly sort of get away from that. But like when you're providing something which is providing genuine value in people's
Yeah.
lives, they kind of want to share it because
Yeah.
it's a good thing. So
Yeah.
just asking has been a real sort of
Yeah.
beneficial thing, and something that's made a big difference.
I think that's two great takeaways there. I think I've read a few times, and I'm a very similar beliefs in our business, that genuinely try and help as many people as we can,
Mhm.
and whether things come from that or not, genuinely, if you can help somebody with their career, as in your case, or with their own marketing strategy, you're going to leave a really nice experience there. And then if ever they then are interested in the thing that you sell, if that's then they may well buy it, but they're going to have a good experience, and and you're going to be on the list, that's for sure, but you do it to help.
Absolutely.
So giving us, and that's this, I think the e-commerce stores listening in, how that might resonate with them is like, what can you give in your e-commerce business to help a potential customer, or just anybody that is thinking of buying something in your product range or whatever. What sort of content can you create that will help them understand the product more, purely just to help them understand the product, and then the byproduct of that maybe, but it might not be, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
give enough. That's I think that's that really resonates with me. And then simply just asking. I think it's quite surprising. Like, I was thinking, just some of the guests we've had on the podcast and some of the people we've got lined up. Just reaching out to people and saying, would you mind X, or could you do what
Absolutely.
this? And it's surprising, that it's surprising what the answer may be. I think
Yeah.
that's maybe a little challenge for the guys that are listening right now, is to maybe hit pause and think about that thing you're going to go and ask for in your next email email sequence, or your next time you maybe been putting off maybe asking something of somebody, or and you're a bit scared to do it, or a bit maybe reserved to do it. Go out there and ask and see, what's the worst that's going to happen? Probably not a lot, really. In reality.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Spot on. Absolutely spot on. I want to just add to your first point there as well about the sort of the long-term perspective and sort of looking to give first, because of I spent a little bit of time in an e-commerce agency, so I'm kind of familiar with the world, and like the of course the nirvana that we all speak about is lifetime value,
Yeah.
and like, if we're going to put this conversation in purely commercial terms, I have a firm belief, and I'm sure that the data backs it up too, that in a commercial sense, that giving attitude in terms of lifetime value is huge. So I think there's a numbers game to be played there as well.
I live and breathe by it myself. I think something just sparked out of my mind there. It's like, I think 7 years ago, I did a talk at Spring Fair, which is the big sort of gift fair, and various other industries, but it's huge. Um, as they say, I think their numbers are like 70,000 people. I did a talk there on I think it was on SEO at the time, or I actually can't remember, it's that long ago. And it might have been Google Shopping, I think, actually. And I got there, we spent a lot of time preparing it. We drove over to NEC, and I went, and there was 7 people there, and it was like, oh man, not like a webinar. I prefer the webinars, definitely. But I just gave it my all, everything, just value. Of course, we mentioned the brand and who we are and what we do, but literally like 40 minutes of presenting, cracking webinar. Last week, well, the week before Christmas, this is like 7.5 years later, we got somebody filled in a form on our website. I spoke to them and I said, oh, how did you hear about it? Oh, I saw you do a talk 7.5 years ago.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah.
So I'd remembered all that time, sort of thing, and throughout that time, he had watched various other webinars and things like that. But if he didn't have put his hand up, it doesn't matter,
Yeah, well, I think if you think about if you're in agency world, and you're looking to bring on board clients, then I would say probably, sort of 8 out of the 10 clients that you think about that are on your books right now, most of them would have felt like friends by the time they've already come in.
Yeah.
you know, and that sort of speaks to that long-term relationship building, you know, and I know it's turf that lots of folks have trod on over the course of time, and it's nothing new for a podcast, but it bears repeating, you know, that
Yeah.
I think particularly in the 2020/2021 world, more marketers are going to be asked to make more decisions purely based on the data, simply because budgets are being cut.
Yeah.
People are going to become more reserved. So I think it bears repeating and keeping in mind that, you know, these sort of more ethereal, sort of more, you know, that where the attribution isn't a straight line,
Yeah,
you
challenging.
know,
Yeah.
can really pay off. And personally, that's where I find a lot of fun as well, to be honest. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. Some great takeaways there. So you touched on, and we sort of very quickly touched on email. So
Mhm.
obviously, I know you have this 20,000 strong community, and I believe email plays quite a big part in that. You know, and you were saying about asking for things, you know, and asking for, you know, for them to share, etc. What would be a
Mhm.
couple of tips you'd give to the listeners? You know, email and e-commerce very, you know, work very well together. What are some of the
Yeah.
tips you would give for that?
So I can only share an experience. So if I share a very well, the one piece of advice that I've always taken to heart was my dad told me never to give advice. So so I can share an
Cool.
experience. And so the things that have worked for me over the course of time is sweating the small stuff. And specifically, it comes down to email copy more than anything.
Yeah.
So I don't spend a lot of time with flashy images, with anything like that. The majority of emails that go out from the Marketing Meetup to our database are plain text,
Yeah.
maybe with a GIF logo in them at the top or at the bottom in my signature, but they
Yeah.
essentially look like you know, like an email you'll
Like
get.
an email rather than a newsletter design
Yes,
template, potentially.
100%,
Yeah.
100%. And then if you think within the boundaries of a plain text email, you're like, well, there's not a lot of opportunity to sort of innovate and do things differently within that. But, you know, it's amazing from everything from the salutation that I use when I say, you know, hi, it's not hi first name, it's hi first name, you resplendent quetzal, you know, which is a type of bird, you know, and like, it's just whatever's in your mind in that moment,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, people are getting called like, hi, you know, hi, Richard, you moment when you catch up to the person who went 100 miles per hour past you and then you caught up to them at the traffic lights, you know, and it's like whatever it is, you know, that's a salutation, but that's not just a hey Joe, that's a
Yeah.
hey magic, you know, a moment of magic, which like gets people into something like this is a little bit different. um After that, you know, the copy, instead of saying, you know, like we've got a webinar next week, it's like, well, let's put some humanity into it. So I'm sat in my chair right now typing this email to you, immediately becomes more human,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
rather than saying we've got a webinar, sell them on the benefits. You know, I really struggle with SEO, and for that reason, I've lined up Mary this week, who
Yeah.
is amazing at SEO.
Yeah.
You know, and then after that point, even stuff like the sign off. So I always sign off with love, Joe. You know, and love is like, um, you know, as a marketer, as a human, it's something that's really important to me. It's something I mean genuinely. But again, it's also something different. And even the signature image, as an example, then I always have a GIF in my signature rather than, and I can see that you do in yours, but like, you know, it elevates it beyond just a flat
Yeah.
image as well.
Just
You know,
stands out a little bit more. Yeah.
that's it. So, you know, what in a plain text email, we've identified 4 or 5
Yeah.
opportunities to sort of
Yeah.
sprinkle some magic in there. So that would be,
Yeah. That was very nice. That I think, you know, just having that, taking a step back, I think, and sort of just being a bit more you as an individual rather than that corporate
oh
piece or that, you
God,
know.
isn't life too boring to be
Yeah.
corporate? I mean,
Yeah.
like, you know, too short to be corporate. You know, it's like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know about you. I mean, how would you define corporate? What would be your definition of a corporate life lived?
I think very strict, you know, very tight. You're not allowed to really express yourself for
Mm.
fear of reprisal or, you know, problems from your peers. I think, you know, you want an environment where you work and who you you surround yourself with, where you can be yourself. So doing some of the things you say, you're very much being yourself, aren't you?
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a lovely definition, because it reminds me of a story. And that story was, one day I was on LinkedIn and I was just browsing, and I wasn't tagged into this post or anything like that, but I stumbled upon a post that people were speaking about the Marketing Meetup. And the chap who posted was speaking about it favorably. But then there was a comment in the comments section from someone who said, "Oh, I subscribed to their emails, but their tone made my toes curl."
Sorry, this was your email.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
So the emails that I send made their toes curl, and I took that as the greatest compliment that I've ever had, because it meant that we were doing something that was either worthy of being loved or hated.
Yeah.
And I think there's a space that exists in the middle of marketing, which is a gray space, which so many of us live, that corporate space. And really, if you're aiming for love or hate, you're probably onto a winner, because people will care about it one way or another.
Yeah, that's very, very well put. I think somebody said a similar thing to me about 10 years ago, where I really had a sort of personal challenge with speaking in front of crowds and things, and generally speaking, it was a big fear of mine. And somebody said to me, well, the reality is, you're going to go to a room and there's 100 people there, and 10 people think you're a complete idiot. Don't worry about it. And another 20 people will not even be listening, and then another 10 people, and so on and so on. But the reality is, there'll be an element in there that are your people, or that resonate with the way you are, and be yourself. And that really resonated with me. It's just like, well, just do come from the right place, in terms of what you're trying to do, and the way that you deliver, and try and help. The reality is, some people won't like you, or won't like the way you do things, but hey, it's okay.
Yeah, spot on. Absolutely spot on. No, I love that. You're dead right.
Okay, so we're going to need to have a good look at your emails, I think, over the next few months, because that's very, very much a high. It's very high on our to-do list right now. Literally, I've just come out of a meeting about half an hour ago regarding our bi-weekly emails that are going out. So that was quite a personal question, actually.
Hopefully it helped. I mean, yeah. Just you.
So in the community, I know you've got a lot of, obviously, marketeers. I mean, you will have a lot, and you have got a lot of e-commerce specific marketeers, and the podcast Ecom at One, very e-com specific. What would you say is one of the number one challenges that e-commerce stores and marketeers are facing right now?
Well, we've covered an element of this already. So, I think there's the e-commerce market beyond most is very data driven. So I used to live in PPC land, but again, it's the same for SEO, affiliate, social. They're driven by the numbers, and I think this is really exciting in a sense, because people have really nailed it these days. They know what they're doing, for the most part. For the good ones, then it is a game of optimization. But my fear is that it kind of removes the fun, the energy. And I guess on one level there's a warning there, which is the thing that makes you special, you have to keep on doing that, rather than sort of over optimizing out your personality. And then the second thing for e-commerce marketers is a wider context thing, which is like, it's 2020, 2021, we're in lockdown right now, the shops are shut. There's a whole range of new dependencies on e-commerce arms for retailers, but then there's also e-commerce only brands. So for example, Gymshark, of course, are smashing it. But then I think one of my favorite brands right now is a brand called Son of a Tailor, who are a outfit out of Denmark. And they offer like personalized clothing. So for example, they will they take a bunch of measurements from you, and they've got an algorithm that matches that, and by the end they give you a t-shirt that is designed to fit you and you only.
Wow.
So it is literally no longer, to play on the cliche, no longer one size fits all. There are brands out there that are building clothes specifically for people. And not only that, then they're building in elements of amazing service as well. So one of the things that Son of a Tailor do, again, as an example, but this is a wider thing, if the t-shirt doesn't fit, that they send you based on their algorithm, they'll replace it for free. And like, if that's the competition versus walking into a retailer where the shelves are messy and the store, everything's out of stock, you wonder which one you're going to go to. So there's some incredible competition, a lot of innovation, a lot of change. So it's exciting and terrifying to be in e-com and retail, I'd say, right now.
Isn't it just? Yeah, terrifying and exciting.
It's fun.
Great. Love it. So going back to the community aspect, obviously we talked about, that obviously we're going out there and we're just doing, from your aspect or your point of view and more the joint point of view is, you're creating and giving, but ultimately, you've got that commercial aspect. What would you say, some of the tips you could give about monetizing a community? I know we're sort of saying, well, people will reach out when they're ready, and they'll like you and believe in your way that you're doing things, etc. But what are some of the ways to monetize a community?
So the first thing I'd say is to take it slow. So the Marketing Meetup broke even for the first 2 years. Made a small profit for the third. And then in the fourth and the fifth, and it's kind of exploded. So, I think that John Asperian speaks of a 30-month mindset, and I'd really encourage folks to take a 30-month mindset before heading into more or less anything, to be honest, brand building wise. So I'd say that's the first thing. But then secondly, you've got to figure out your model. So my community grew into a business and remains a community, but also, is now monetized. So we started out with sponsorship as the main thing, and that was a needs must. So we could put on a buffet at the events, and it just so happened that more people wanted to sort of sponsor over the course of time. So that's how we added more revenue. The thought process being applied there is like, who are the people that can benefit from being exposed to my bunch of people that I'm bringing together? So in my case, it was recruiters. It was organization that would offer qualifications for marketers. And folks like that, people who wanted to hire marketers. All these people came in and sponsored the Marketing Meetup because they wanted access to that group of people. Secondly, we're seeing a trend right now of more premium content, whether it's through Patreon and stuff like that. So we're going to be following a similar model very soon. So we're going to be launching our own membership element to the Marketing Meetup, where we're building out what we're likening to a Netflix for marketers. So folks will be able to go in and sort of grab 10-minute videos on very specific how to do stuff. So like that kind of solves a problem where folks are always like, I want to know how to do this thing. I want to know how to do it, and I want to speak to the expert on doing it, but I don't know how. So we're kind of filling that gap. And again, that's one example. It'll be like £10 a month. We were speaking about this before we went live. I'm very aware that there's a subscription overload in the world. So you really need to provide something that's so valuable that people want it. So what we've spoken about sponsorship, and we've spoken about sort of like more of a membership based things. I think there's lots and lots of ways. I mean, in effect, what you have when you've built a community is an audience. And if you've done it right, then you've got an audience that both forgives you for or thinks that you have their best interests at heart because you're wanting to help them. And so therefore receptive to it when you go to them and say, look, we've got these partners and they've got this offer for you. So then that builds out stuff like affiliates or, training programs or workshops or whatever it may be. So there's a whole range of monetizing options, but you got to do the hard work first.
And I think the guys that are listening in, some of those different options will resonate with them in different ways, sort of thing. So sponsorship, and sort of, tying in with firms that you can partner with. I think that will resonate with a lot of people and a lot of our clients, and I know listeners do a lot with partnerships and sort of ambassador type programs and that type of thing. And then the lovely subscription models, the £10 a month, the £50 a month, the gin clubs of all the different e-commerce stores that are listening. How can you turn that into a subscription business. We talked about that yesterday. I talked about that yesterday as well, but subscription, so I really push that. It's like the holy grail, I think, in terms of just that consistency
For
of
sure.
revenue, not as many peaks and troughs, and and just build it. And obviously, but ultimately you've got to give value, which is what we've talked about a lot throughout this whole podcast. No one's going to stay with you unless you're good at what you do and you have a genuine passion for delivering quality content that somebody can implement, or that they're getting value from. So ultimately you've got to give good content and build out that community. And that 30-month give almost potentially. But some great takeaways there, Joe. Thank you very much.
No problem.
So we're coming to a close. So I think one thing that really resonates with me talking to you is just how positive and how sort of the way your mind works. What would you say? What are some tips you would give, or that you've built definitely in this last 9 months? It's crazy growth in your business. How have you managed to stay so positive? I'm sure it's not the same all day every day, but it's
no, it really isn't. I'd say that, so we're recording this in January, and I'd say that to the back end of December last year, then I was in a rough spot. I was knackered beyond belief, and exhausted, and I let the news get on top of me and stuff like that. So I think I'm not always positive. I think that's the first thing to say. That being said, I think there's a choice, right? And I think I just made a choice at a point. So for example, this week when Boris announced lockdown number 3, I felt my chest get tighter, and like my throat sort of just close up, and you could feel my breath sort of slowing down and getting a little bit more labored. And it was in that moment that I was like, no, I'm going to make a choice here. I'm going to make a choice that this is not going to get on top of me. And I'm not saying that that's available to every person all the time.
Yeah.
But I do think there is a choice to make when you can, which is, you know what? I'm going to choose to be positive.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's really hard because whenever you have a conversation with someone who's speaking about politics, or whenever you have a conversation with someone speaking about COVID, it's always doom and gloom, but for whatever reason, I just choose not to engage in those conversations. It's thank you for your opinion, but I'm going to move on, and just don't let it get on top of you. So I think staying positive is much, much easier said than done. But I think there's something about trying to make a choice and then remind yourself that that's the choice you've made. You
can definitely work on it, can't you? Obviously, it's not all day, every day. You're going to be, we're humans, all of us, but you decide. So do you listen to much news then, or do you sort of turn off to it quite a bit?
No, I've got a news ban in the house. And I think this is about choice of consumption.
Yeah.
So I do not. I've done my best to stop passively consuming content.
Yeah.
So I've blocked a load of words on Twitter as well.
Oh wow!
Which has been really, really, really positive, because I love Twitter as a platform, but it can be poison for the mind. Likewise with the news. So I think I do my best to avoid it at all circumstances, unless I choose to engage with it, in which point you make that choice. But again, it's a conscious act.
I think there'll be a few people listening to this that'll be right. Twitter, Brexit, COVID.
I'm happy to share my list of blocked words. There is a
block keyword list.
That's it.
That's it. Turn off the news maybe once a week, twice a week, when there's a big announcement, or not. So even the big announcements, when there's going to be some big tier changes, you're on those or not?
Well, what difference does it make? I'm sat here in a village right now. I go for a dog walk. I pick up my shopping once a week, and that's pretty much the only time I go outside since March.
You can still do that in tier 9 sort of thing. Hopefully.
Exactly. I think what difference does it make at the end of it?
I have to, yeah, totally. Well, thank you so much, Joe. We always like to end every episode on a book recommendation.
So before we came on, then we were speaking about books, and I said that I'm purely on audiobooks. So the audiobook, there's a few. I mean, so like, if the most interesting person in the world for me is like Barack Obama, I think he's amazing. So I just finished his audiobook.
Autobiography, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like 28 hours long, but it's an amazing audiobook. I really enjoyed The Body by Bill Bryson, which is nothing to do with marketing, but I think just fascinating. And then marketing books, I'm sure there's loads, but you know, we all read too many business books anyway, don't we? So
we've got plenty of them. That's fine.
Yeah. So let's do Bill Bryson. I really like him.
It's funny. I actually got the Barack Obama book for Christmas. Yeah,
nice.
Yeah,
it's a cracker.
Yeah, that's on my list of to get it on my desk next week. Yeah.
No, well, you should. Well worth it.
Well, thank you, Joe. That's been an amazing 45 minutes. I really appreciate your time. Really appreciate you coming on the show. For the guys that are listening in that want to find out more about the Marketing Meetup and more about yourself, where's the best place to go to, Joe?
So they can head to the marketingmeetup.com and probably sign up for the newsletter or one of our webinars, or indeed the membership once that goes live end of Jan, beginning of Feb.
Keep an eye out for the membership. And thanks once again, Joe.